Hello, everyone. Like Led Zeppelin, one of the most influencing metal bands, sings, "It's been a long time since I rock and roll. Nearly 3 weeks have passed, and the separation has almost sickened me." So, we're back with the classes one more time. Let me introduce myself. I'm Rakesh Shrestha, your English teacher. And in today's class, we will learn about relative clauses like never before. Let's pay attention. The topic is right there on the board. And along with that particular topic, I will be discussing a little more detailed ideas on using clauses, steps to make them, and explanations. All right, let's begin. See, in your schools, your teachers must have taught you clause to be very simple. With the idea of clause, it is a larger sentence or the parts of larger sentences. And in relative clauses, we read about these two different types basically. Yeah, there are more subtypes. We will discuss about that in my next class. Today my most focus will rely on the concept of defining relative clause and non-defining relative clause. For these, we will use pronouns, which are the relative pronouns. More or less, the relative pronouns that we are going to use for both types of clause are same. You can see, the diagram. The only difference that you can find is a big word, which is highlighted bold, and that is that, T-H-A-T, that. So how does it work? This is what we're going to work out together. Stay tuned. Before we start discussing, let's read some examples. This will become a kind of a preface to understand our topic for the day. So look at the defining relative clause examples. I have used colors, for making them distinct. You can match the numbers, you can match the colors, and then you can find how I am mixing or merging two individual sentences into one. Look at number one, we haven't met Mr. Smith yet. His daughter studies with Paul. And if I want to put those two sentences into one, see, this is how you do. We haven't met Mr. Smith yet, whose daughter studies with Paul. So you just merge those two sentences into one by using one relative pronoun, that is whose, and then you introduce a clause. Now, why this is defining, let's read a few more examples, and then I will let you know. I'll go with, number two. We won't forget that day. We went to Justin Bieber's concert that day. So if I'm going to put these two sentences into one, this is how you were doing it. We won't forget the day when we went to Justin Bieber's concert. The last sentence now, the last number actually. They sent me a postcard of the hotel. They stayed there on holiday. Now the two sentences are merged into one, and it appears like they sent me a postcard of the hotel where they stayed on holiday. Now in all these examples, we are talking about defining, or the concept of merging two sentences into one. Now what is defining relative, what is non-defining relative? I shall come to you after we take a look at the examples of non-defining. Let's see. These are a few more examples. You can watch it later and see how the sentences are merged into one. 4 more examples I have listed for you people. Since they belong to the defining part, I prefer to skip, and that way we can save time for others. Now, non-defining examples. Now, in these examples, see, there is something distinct which I will mention to you. Number one, there is no number actually, so just rely on the bullets. Purple colored sentences. Al Gore gave a long and boring speech. He won the Nobel Prize. Now, the two sentences are merged into one, single, and that becomes Al Gore, who won the Nobel Prize, gave a long and boring speech. If you have noticed, something here which is very important, I should mark it right over here on the board, is the use of comma. See, I will flip back to the previous examples. Here in defining, there is no comma used when I merge those two sentences into one. But once I introduce to you non-defining examples, okay, in all examples at the bottom, starting with the sentence from Al Gore and ending with the sentence scientists are working dot dot dot, okay, you must have seen the use of comma. I have separated the sentences, though I merge them into one, okay, I have used a comma. Now, why does it happen, and how does a meaning, okay, change when you use a comma for using non-defining clauses? What happens if you simply remove them? Can you remove it or not? How to merge two sentences in the easiest way possible? That is a skill we are going to explore together. Okay, now here are steps to join two sentences in a relative clause. But before we take these steps, I would like to show you some elements which are essential in understanding clauses. So here we have one example. All right, only one example, and then we'll go with the slide. See, I write two individual sentences here. Okay, the first sentence that I write is, okay, my heart, okay, is burning. Suppose this is the first sentence, okay, I have got for you, my heart is burning. And the second is, okay, it beats for you. Now, when I write these two sentences, okay, now my ultimate task is to use relative clause. So I'm going to merge these two sentences into one, and I would do like this. My heart, okay, which beats for you is burning. Okay, if we can read the sentence. See the first sentence, sentence number one, my heart is burning. Okay, sentence number two, you have it beats for you, and then I merge these two sentences into one, the user relative clause, my heart, which beats for you, and I can close it with a comma, is burning and ends with a full stop. Let us have the full stop, okay, quite distinct. Now, what are these elements that we are talking about? See, okay, some of the basic concepts of clause, all right? Pay lots of attention here. The first thing we have in clause formation, okay, is, okay, as mentioned in the steps 2, we identify the common elements, okay, like my hurt, and my hurt is repeated here with a pronoun which is it. So we have these actually called common idea, all right? These are common idea. We'll bring it up here. Now, when you merge them into sentences, like I've mentioned, we're using one relative pronoun. See, this is relative pronoun. A relative pronoun in the clause actually refers to a noun which is kept close to it, which in grammar call antecedent. All right, if you can remember this particular word, because this is important. Now, what is the function of antecedent in a clause? The function is visible here when I use a verb. Now, see, how do I do that? I use the verb beats, not simply because I'm using which, because which can agree with beats, has beaten, is beating, anything. But why I choose beats, okay? The first idea, I rely on the tense here in the second sentence because that's the idea I brought here. Next is, by rule, the antecedent is actually the subject of, okay, the verb that we use in a relative pronoun that agrees. Like, which beats, this which actually is hard, so the agreement of beats actually is with the antecedent of the relative pronoun, which is here. And this is the rule that you have to keep on following, okay, in any sentence that you write. A simple example, okay, I would like to draw here. This is not related to clause. However, we are using clause again, but my intention is just to make you feel comfortable with the idea of antecedent. See here, if I write a sentence, one of the boys, okay, who? One of the boys who, now I use here are, one of the boys who are dot dot dot, it could be anything. The idea of here are is because I have the antecedent, and that is boys. So try to know the antecedent, whether it is singular or plural, okay, and then agree your subject when you use the relative clause. More on this, we shall be coming up with other examples, but right now, let's quickly find out how to make relative clause examples. Steps are explained. We'll go with number one. First step, find the common element, like I have shown it here. So my heart, and in the second sentence, okay, what is that word which is related, okay, to this particular word in the first sentence, and that is it. So here is another example. We will discuss on this now. The man is very tall. First sentence, I saw him yesterday. Now, if you identify the common element, they're highlighted. The man in the first sentence and him in the second sentence both mean the same. Okay, the arrow shows you that. Step 2, cross out the second element because you're not going to use that. So probably this is how you're going to study. All right, crossing out. Why? The next step will explain you that. Start copying the first sentence until the first common element, and that is the man. See, in the first sentence, the first common element is the man. We end it up to here. Now it's time for we to merge the ideas, and then we will go for step number 4, write the relative pronoun. Now, we have listed relative pronouns: whose, when, which, okay, what, that. Now, which suits you better? You judge it based upon your experience and then choose it. With man, okay, you prefer to use among these. Which one is suitable according to the context? You choose that. So I would prefer to choose who, the man who. Now, step 5, copy the second sentence except the element we had crossed out because that is repeated idea. We don't need it, and that is I saw yesterday. All right, so when you add this right here with the steps explained, that would read something like this: the man who I saw yesterday. Then if there is anything left from the first sentence, copy it afterwards to make it manageable, to make it meaningful, and that is what you added there. The man who I saw yesterday, okay, is very tall. So you're bringing this predicate from the first sentence, and then our clause example is complete. The man who I saw yesterday is very tall. Now, few more things, again, important. Check if we can write that instead of who, whom, which. Substitutions. This is always interesting because you have to keep on understanding variation. Variation brings a new test and a variety in your writing, and that is what becomes quite tempting for your readers. The man who I saw yesterday is very tall. Now see what happens if I replace that who with that. Does it make sense to you? Okay. Check if we can omit the pronouns. Like the man who I saw yesterday. Now, what if I just remove that? Okay, cross it and read, instead of reading, okay, the man who I saw yesterday is very tall. Can I say the man I saw yesterday is very tall? Does it make sense? If it does, yes, you can just put it right because that is more colloquial and it is preferred. So the final sentence we got, okay, merging those two sentences which we're discussing in the beginning, now becomes the man I saw yesterday is very tall, and I told you this is very colloquial, very, okay, ordinary and very quick grabbing. Now, when to avoid those pronouns? Because we're studying about relative clause, and without missing a relative pronoun and without not even showing relative pronoun in the sentence, okay, how to get this comprehensive idea, we are also going to learn them in steps. Okay, the sentence is ready, like we have said. Now let us read some more functions about, okay, the clauses that we are reading. How to use them in a sentence, and what meanings, okay, they bear while using. Defining relative clause, very interesting one. Defining clauses give essential information about their antecedent. You remember the antecedent that I have mentioned. And without them, the meaning will be incomplete. These never go between commas. Now see the idea that we're discussing, the use of comma, where to use, where to not use. If I use comma, okay, I'm using non-defining in a sense that I don't have to define that particular object that I am showing you. All right, but if I'm using defining, okay, I should not be using this comma because I am defining that particular, okay, object in a sentence. I will read this, okay, when you go with the example, but let us read some important information, okay, in the bullets. You see the relative pronouns there, who, whom, and which can be substituted by that in a more colloquial context. We will clarify the context in a while. Who, whom, which, and that can be omitted if they are the object of the relative clauses, that is, if they are followed by a subject. Quite complex, I know. You won't understand unless we see that sentences. So the next slide will present you those ideas and I will highlight them, okay, for you. The last information, okay, for better grip. If the relative pronoun is followed by a verb, then it can't be omitted. But if the relative clause is followed by a subject plus verb, yes, we can. Now, what is that? Here is the example. See the first sentence, Mary is the girl who arrived late at the party. What is the relative clause? We're using who is the relative clause. Now, what is the word that you see right after that? It's arrived, and that is verb. So you're using a verb. Okay, who and arrived is a verb. In the second sentence, okay, Mary is the girl who is the relative, okay, pronoun once again, but it is followed by a subject and verb. Not like verb, but you have there subject plus verb. See the difference. Now, for variation, what we can do is, when you have this structure, relative pronoun directly using a verb after that, it is the subject of this verb, so you cannot remove this, you cannot omit this. But when you have a subject of the verb itself and a relative pronoun right here, like in the example, second, Mary is the girl who I told, I can remove who in the next sentence. And that would read, okay, something like, Mary is the girl, okay, I told you about yesterday. But the first one, Mary is the girl who arrived late at the party. I cannot remove that who because that is the subject of the relative clause itself. All right. Now see the cross marking and you will understand. All right. That is easy. See the second sentence and fourth sentence following this particular structure, and it's advised, okay, to remove the relative pronoun. It's not that, okay, you should or you must, but it's better because that is more formal, okay, in using. And that is why, okay, we are always recommended to remove that part. Just like the concept of reported speech, the THED, that conjunction is not so important. It's the same thing right here. So I would also recommend everyone, if you are using clauses, when you are following this particular rigid structure, to not use a relative pronoun. Let the readers, okay, understand, okay, the writer has done it intentionally because that is doing something with rule and it brings a kind of a variation. All right, move on with non-defining relative clauses now. Little different. Non-defining clause give extra information, that is, we could remove it without changing the meaning of the sentence. Now this is again interesting. I will relate that with one example, okay, with the next slide. They're always separated by comma, so one distinct information, please keep on marking this. If you're using non-defining, you're using comma for sure. Okay, if you are using defining, do not use comma. That is never used for non-defining relative clauses, so you have to exclude that completely. Pronouns can never be omitted because they are always used with the subject verb, okay, techniques, and therefore you should never remove the relative pronoun in using non-defining relative clauses. The antecedent is usually a proper name of a person or thing, and it contains a possessive, okay, like my, his, her, the definite article though, or the other demonstratives. You must have learned these, okay, technical terms, possessive cases and demonstrative cases in grammar. I will not be discussing on these right now because that is not my purpose. So look at these examples and understand the concept of using non-defining clause. And here let us compare what is the difference, okay, when we use defining and non-defining. See, Mary, who arrived late at the party, is my cousin. It is following this particular structure. Mary, who arrived. See, it's a verb, no subject used after the relative pronoun. When you use this, we cannot omit it, so you're never advised. Now, what is the difference if I remove the comma here? Mary, who arrived late at the party, is my cousin. When I write comma, when I use comma, non-defining relative function, my understanding or our understanding together is the number of Mary, okay, from the context that I'm talking is only one. All right, but once I remove the comma, the meaning changes. might be, okay, in a context from where I am speaking, the number of Mary, like girls whose names are Mary, are more than one. So when I use without comma, Mary who arrived late at the party, okay, is my cousin. There were many Marys who were in the party, but it was one, okay, only who arrived late, and that is my cousin. The other Marys are not my cousin. So that is your understanding with the use of comma and no use of comma, and therefore it's always important. So the way you say it, okay, in speaking you cannot show this comma, but the way you take the pause actually tells you that there is a comma and you are using non-defining relative clause. And with that, the listener will make a different picture of what you are actually saying. And that is always important in communication. So more examples here. Paris, which is the capital of France, is a beautiful city. Now, another difference in non-defining clauses, if I remove these added relative clause, okay, it still makes a complete sentence. Like, I can remove which is the capital of France and then just say Paris is a beautiful city. It makes its sense complete, but this might not happen actually, okay, in defining relative clauses. It will make incomplete ideas. So you have got few more sentences at the bottom which you can read on your own. Relative pronouns that we studied today, quick glance: who, whom, which, whose, okay, where, when, that. These are the list of the relative pronouns we use for making relative clauses. Now, how to use who will specify these examples. It is used to talk about people. I always prefer to do that. It can be the subject or the object of the relative clause, like in the case of defining and non-defining. In defining relative clause, it can be always replaced by that, which is more colloquial, and we explain that with some examples. In defining relative clauses, it can be omitted if it is the object of the relative clause, and this is what I even explained by drawing, okay, these things on the board. If you are still confused, don't panic. We have next day's class in which I will go in detail, okay, how to even use, okay, phrases, or let's say like, okay, not clauses, but those clauses into phrase function. And there I can discuss about these ideas, okay, in detail. So example, with example everything becomes easy. Let us compare, okay, this example with, okay, what is being explained. Now, Mary, who arrived late at the party, is my cousin. So we are using who to talk about people, and the person here is, okay, Mary. It can be the subject or the object of the relative clause. Okay, here it is the subject of the relative clause who arrived late at the party, and its antecedent is Mary. Okay, therefore the verb is at the back with is my cousin. Is chosen because we're using the antecedent of the relative clause. Okay, the subject Mary right over there, and who arrived past tense agreeing, okay, with Mary in past tense. So antecedent rules. Whom, it is used to talk about people, more formal than who. Now how? Let us read few more information again. It is always the object of the relative clause. Okay, it can never take the position of a subject, like the case of I and me, okay, in simple pronoun function. I always subject, me is always object, and therefore we never bring me, okay, in the beginning of a sentence. So it's wrong to say, okay, me is happy, as simple as that. It's always I am happy, okay, you make me happy. That is subject and object function. So we apply the same techniques here. Whom is the object of the relative clause, that is, it always has a subject after words. So in defining relative clause, it can be replaced by that. And in defining relative clauses, it can be omitted if it does not have a preposition before. Now with this a little complex structure that we are going to talk about. What is preposition doing here? All right, how to use prepositions, okay, in relative clause with relative pronouns. We are coming on to that. Okay, see here, example. Mary is the girl whom I told you about yesterday. And because you have, okay, in this example, subject plus verb, I told, now see if we can remove this whom, whether it makes sense or not. Mary is the girl I told you about yesterday. For me, it is making sense, right? I'm sure, okay, it is making the sense to you too. Now, which? It is used to talk about anything, okay, but people. It can be the subject or the object of the relative clause. It has more, okay, functions than the other. In defining relative clauses, it can be always replaced by that, which is more colloquial, okay, more comfortable and quite practiced by majority of speakers. They prefer to omit that part, but you got to feel that, okay, this, they're omitting this particular word in this example because of this reason. Just read the example and you understand. The car which she bought, okay, last month is a Ferrari. All right, examples always keep on making, okay, things easy. Now whose, you can read it right over there, okay, and then just see the example how the tips that are given to you, okay, are being expressed or executed in the sentence that is given for us. That is the boy whose mother is a doctor. And when you are showing that, see, the arrow is going to help you understand everything that is talked about. Whose talks about possession, belongings, okay, the mother. Now, whose mother is a doctor? Now, who is the mother and whose mother is it? Okay, she is the mother of the boy. That is the boy whose mother is a doctor. Now, the last thing, it is always followed by whatever it is possessed, and you can see those, okay, kept together, okay, and right there, okay, next to the relative word. Whose is a relative word, and the words they refer to, okay, are placed together. Okay, now where is another relative pronoun that you can use. An example sentence is given there. That is the museum where I went last month. Full stop is missing, okay, that is an accident. I would consider you can just put that up, okay, yourself. Similarly, there is expression, okay, made by when. Now see here, okay, we will discuss later with these examples how we can use, okay, the same sentences little differently by introducing preposition. Like May is the month when flowers bloom. If I don't like to use when, okay, I can also swap this sentence and bring a slightly different example, okay, by introducing prepositions like May is the month in which flowers bloom. Or if I don't like that too, I might even say something like May is the month flowers bloom in. See, there are varieties of ways of, okay, using clause examples, and once you learn, okay, relative pronouns and their significant proper uses, then only you will be able to, okay, paraphrase the sentences, and you can produce, okay, varieties of techniques. Like I have given to you here, May is the month when flowers bloom, May is the month in which flowers bloom, or May is the month, okay, flowers bloom in. Okay, this is last segment, that, and it's all here for you. You can read, you can watch, you can learn. That's the end of today's class. And like I've said, when I open this class for you people, we're learning relative clause, and today it was not the final. This was just part A. I will join you next Wednesday with part B. Till then, keep on practicing with what you have learned today, and just desperately wait for me so that I can complete this. Thank you for watching me, everyone. Bye-bye.